I am 77 years old and I have lived long enough to know that you cannot trust anyone, not even your own family, especially your own family. I sit in my chair by the window and watch as the last rays of the October sun paint the maple leaves on Maple Street a golden crimson. Framingham has never been a noisy city, but my street is especially quiet, as if frozen in time, just like me. My name is Wilmer Beckwith. I worked as a financial auditor for a large company for 42 years. My whole life has been spent among numbers, reports, and balance sheets. People think that's boring, but they're wrong. Behind every number, there's a story. Behind every mistake in the calculations, there's someone's lie. I've learned to see that lie, to sense it, like a hunting dog senses game. This ability has saved my company from major losses more than once. And as it turned out, it saved me once too. I look at the photo of Evelyn, my late wife, standing on the mantelpiece. She died 5 years ago after 52 years of marriage. Pancreatic cancer. The doctor said she had 6 months to live. She lived for 18 as if to spite all the predictions. That's how she was, stubborn, strong. And now I live alone in a big house built for a family that no longer exists. However, I do have a family. Formally. My son Bradley, who is now 51, and his wife Rhonda, who is 39. But Bradley inherited neither my business acumen nor my mother's strength of character. He works in the supply department of a local brewery, earns a decent salary, but lives from paycheck to paycheck. And his wife? Oh, Rhonda is a special case. They got married 8 years ago, when Bradley was 43 and she was 31. Late for him, early for her, but who am I to judge? But from the very beginning, I sensed that something was not quite right. Rhonda Farrow is an ambitious, always impeccably dressed woman with cold gray eyes. She works as a corporate events coordinator at the Sheraton Hotel and seems to know everyone and everything in Framingham. In the early years of their marriage, she didn't even try to hide her disappointment in Bradley. The look she gave me when I mentioned my bank account spoke louder than any words. Evelyn was still alive then, and we often discussed the situation. Wilmer, she said, the girl just expected more. She thought that the son of a successful financier should have his own house, not rent an apartment in the city center. We always told Bradley that he had to achieve everything himself, I replied. We never promised him an inheritance while we were alive. I know, dear, but the world has changed. It's harder for young people now than it was for us. I didn't argue with her, but deep down I knew it wasn't about hardship. Bradley had always looked for the easy way out, and Rhonda had expected to marry into a fortune. Well, she had miscalculated. After Evelyn's death, Rhonda changed her tactics. Now she pretended to be a caring sister-in-law. She called 3 times a week, asked about my health, invited me to dinner. Bradley seemed happy with this change, but I saw the insincerity in every smile she gave me. I saw how her gaze assessed the value of the furniture in my house, estimating how much the paintings on the walls might be worth. Rhonda waited. She waited for the old man to kick the bucket and leave his inheritance. Today they invited me to dinner again. I reluctantly agreed. These visits had become more frequent lately, which in itself aroused suspicion. Their house is a modest 2-story cottage on the outskirts of town. They rent it from a company that I own through a chain of front men. Even Bradley doesn't know about this. I bought this house 3 years ago when they were looking for a new place to live. The rent they pay is below market value, but they don't know that. It's my little secret, my way of caring for a son who never learned to take care of himself. Dinner began as usual. Bradley talked about work, about problems with malt suppliers, about how much his bosses appreciated him. I nodded, pretending to be interested. In reality, I was watching Rhonda. She was tense, though she tried to hide it. Her smile seemed forced. Her eyes darted around the room, avoiding my gaze. "Try this wine, Wilmer," she said, handing me a glass. "We bought it especially for you. French Burgundy, vintage 2000, I snorted. A bottle like that costs at least $150. Where did they get the money for such extravagances? That's very thoughtful of you, I replied dryly, taking a small sip. We want you to know how much you mean to us, Rhonda continued, her voice becoming sweeter than molasses. After all, family is the most important thing in life, right? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Something was definitely going on. Rhonda had never been sentimental. By the way, Dad, Bradley interjected, How are your investments in that new fund? You said you were expecting a good return. So that's what it was. The conversation smoothly shifted to my finances. Everything is going according to plan, I replied briefly. The returns are higher than expected. It's so great that you're still so actively involved in investing at your age, Rhonda remarked with feigned admiration. Many people at 77 are no longer so attentive to detail. My mind is still razor sharp, dear, I smiled, looking her straight in the eye. I notice every little thing, every single thing. She looked away for a moment, then looked back at me with a smile. Of course, I have no doubt. I'm just in awe. Dinner continued. Rhonda bustled around me, serving food and pouring wine. It was so out of character for her that I could almost physically feel the insincerity in her every movement. Bradley didn't seem to notice anything, or he pretended not to notice. My son always preferred not to see the uncomfortable truth. I once dreamed that Bradley would follow in my footsteps. I took him to the office on weekends, showed him how finance worked, explained the principles of auditing. He nodded and smiled, but I could see he was bored. At 15, he announced that he wanted to be a musician. He played guitar in a garage band and dreamed of rock stardom. Evelyn supported him, saying that the child should be allowed to express himself. By the age of 25, there was no trace of his musical ambitions left. He got by with odd jobs, then got a job at a brewery, where he still works to this day. He never married until he was over 40, and then Rhonda appeared. I looked at them now, my soft-bodied son with his growing belly and thinning hair, and his wife with her sharp, knife-like gaze, and thought, how did we all end up here? Where did I go wrong with Bradley? And why does my gut tell me that tonight's dinner is not just a family gathering? After dessert, an overly sweet cheesecake that I knew Rhonda had bought at the bakery on Main Street for $30 a slice, I got ready to go home. Leaving already? Rhonda looked disappointed. How about some more coffee or brandy? No, thank you, I said, getting up from the table. At my age, late nights are not for me. That was a lie. I often stayed up late reading financial reports or detective novels, but today the atmosphere in the house made me feel vaguely uneasy, and I couldn't explain why. When I was already in the hallway, Rhonda suddenly hugged me, a gesture she had never made before. We're so glad to have you, Wilmer, she said, and there was a note in her voice that I couldn't decipher. Right, Bradley? Of course, Dad, my son said, looking past me. You're very important to us. All the way home, I replayed this strange evening in my head. Something was definitely going on, but I didn't understand what it was yet. When I got home, the first thing I did was check my mail. An old habit I'd developed over the years. One envelope caught my attention. A letter from the bank where I keep most of my savings. Strange, they usually send correspondence by email. I opened the envelope and scanned the contents. It was a standard notification of monthly transactions. I was about to put it aside when my eye caught the last line. It listed a transaction that I hadn't made. I frowned and took a magnifying glass out of my desk drawer to get a better look at the small print. At that moment, the phone rang. Reluctantly, I tore myself away from the letter and picked up the receiver. Mr. Beckwith. The voice was formal, with a slight note of alarm. This is Patrick Hammond from the security department at First National Bank. I apologize for the late call, but a situation has arisen that requires your immediate attention. I gripped the phone tighter. I'm listening. Sir, our system has detected suspicious activity on your account. A large loan was taken out in your name today. We would like to confirm that this transaction was authorized by you. My heart skipped a beat, then began to pound twice as hard. What loan? My voice sounded hoarse. I haven't taken out any loans. There was a heavy pause on the other end of the line. Mr. Beckwith, according to our records, at 4:30 p.m. today, a loan for $2,700,000 was taken out against your property. We have the signed documents and I didn't hear what he said next. My ears rang and black spots floated before my eyes. $2,700,000. In my name, without my knowledge. This is fraud, I interrupted him when I was able to speak again. I didn't sign any documents. Block this transaction immediately. This must be some kind of mistake, I said, gripping the phone tightly. I repeat, I did not take out a loan for $2,700,000. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was about to jump out of my chest. At 77, I couldn't afford such shocks, but the adrenaline rushing through my veins made me pull myself together instantly. Mr. Beckwith, the bank employee's voice sounded alarmed. Our system has all the necessary documents with your signature. The loan was approved less than 4 hours ago. My signature has been forged. I felt anger replacing panic. Who approved this loan? I need a name. Sir, I am not authorized to provide such information over the phone. However, given the seriousness of the situation, I would recommend that you come to our head office immediately. I will contact the manager on duty, and he will be waiting for you. I glanced at my watch. It was almost 9 in the evening. Are you saying that the bank is open at this time? No, sir. But in cases of suspected fraud, we have an emergency protocol. If you are willing to come in now, I will arrange a meeting. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said curtly and hung up. My hands were shaking slightly as I took an old suit out of the closet. I hadn't worn it since Evelyn's funeral, but now I needed to look presentable. I was furious and scared at the same time. Someone had stolen my identity, forged my signature, and taken a huge amount of money. It was pure fraud. But who could have done it? On the way to the bank, I feverishly ran through the possibilities. To take out such a large loan, not only my signature was required, but also a whole package of documents. Passport, tax information, documents for collateral property. All of this was kept at my home, in a safe in my office. Who had access to it? Bradley knew about the safe, but I never told him the combination. Rhonda? I remembered her strange behavior tonight, her feigned concern, the expensive wine. My suspicions grew stronger by the minute. First National Bank was located in an old red brick building in the center of Framingham. I had worked with this bank for over 30 years and knew almost all of the senior staff personally. When I pulled up, Michael Donovan, vice president of key accounts, was already waiting at the main entrance. We had known each other for 20 years. Wilmer, he said, extending his hand, I'm terribly sorry we have to meet under these circumstances. Michael, I shook his hand firmly, I need to know everything. Every detail of this scam. He nodded and led me inside. Our footsteps echoed off the marble floor in the empty bank lobby. We walked into the conference room where an impressive stack of documents was already waiting on the table. Here are copies of all the loan documents. Donovan opened the folder. The application was received yesterday, processed this morning, and approved by 4 o'clock this afternoon. Everything looked flawless. Excellent credit history, complete documentation, collateral valued at $6 million. I picked up the loan application. The purpose of loan field read, real estate investment. My signature at the bottom of the page looked almost perfect. Almost. That's not my signature, I pointed to the document. Look, here the flourish goes up, but I always finish down. Besides, I never put a period after my signature. Donovan looked closely. You're right, but these are minor details that only a graphologist would notice. To the average employee, the signature looks authentic. I turned the page. Who approved the loan? Jeffrey Morton, our new credit manager. He's only been with us 3 months, came over from Chase, Manhattan. He didn't know you personally. I felt rage boiling up inside me. $2,700,000, and no one even called me to confirm? What the hell is going on at your bank, Michael? Donovan rubbed his nose. The protocol was followed, Wilmer. The call was made to the number listed on the application. Someone confirmed the transaction. What number? I pulled my phone out of my pocket. That's not my number. Donovan checked his documents. No, not your primary number. It says a different one here. Damn it. I slammed my fist on the table. I need to block this loan immediately. Has the money been transferred yet? Not yet. According to bank rules, transactions over $1 million require additional verification, which takes 12 to 24 hours. The money should be transferred tomorrow morning. I breathed a slight sigh of relief. All was not lost yet. I demand that the transaction be blocked immediately and investigated. This is fraud on a particularly large scale. Donovan nodded. I understand. I have already contacted our legal department and security service. They will begin an investigation in the morning. In the meantime, I will personally block the transfer of funds. Not in the morning, Michael. Now. Call your lawyers right now. Wake everyone up. I'm not leaving here until I have guarantees that this loan has been canceled. Donovan looked surprised by my insistence, but he didn't argue. He left the room to make a few calls, and I stayed behind to study the documents. The more I delved into the details, the more convinced I became that this was the work of a professional. All the documents looked flawless. My tax return, property appraisal, even my health insurance, everything was presented in perfect order. Someone had gained access to all my papers. Donovan returned half an hour later. I spoke with the head of the legal department and the chairman of the board, he said. Given your status as a client and the obvious signs of fraud, they have agreed to an emergency credit freeze. All the necessary documents are being prepared now. Great. I relaxed a little. How soon will it be finalized? Everything will be completed by morning. You'll need to sign a fraud statement and a few other papers. Can you come in tomorrow at 9 a.m.? I nodded. I'll be here. What about the investigation? Will you contact the police? Donovan hesitated. That's your decision, Wilmer. The bank can file a report, but we usually leave that option up to the customer in these cases. I thought about it. Going to the police meant publicity, investigation, questioning. If Bradley and Rhonda were really behind this, the case could take a very unpleasant turn. But on the other hand, such a crime should not go unpunished. I'll think about it, I finally said. First, I want to conduct my own investigation. As you say, Donovan handed me his business card. Here's my personal number. Call anytime if you need help. On the way home, I couldn't shake the feeling that Rhonda was behind all this. Her strange behavior tonight, her sudden concern, the expensive wine. It all made sense now. She was trying to lull me into a false sense of security while dark deeds were being done behind my back. But how did she get access to my documents? And most importantly, why did she need such a huge amount of money? $2,700,000 is not just a large loan. It's a fortune. What did she plan to do with it? When I got home, it was almost 11 o'clock at night. The house greeted me with silence and darkness. I turned on the light in the hallway and headed straight for my study. I needed to check the safe. My study had always been my sanctuary. Evelyn never entered without knocking, even after 40 years of marriage. As a child, Bradley was afraid of this room with its dark oak paneling and massive desk. I loved order and kept all my papers in perfect condition. Folders neatly labeled, documents sorted by category, books arranged alphabetically. The safe was hidden behind a painting of a seascape. Corny, but effective. I moved the painting aside and froze. There were smudged fingerprints on the safe style. I always wiped it down after use. An old habit developed over years of paranoia. My heart began to race again. I quickly dialed the combination. Evelyn's birthday, altered according to a specific algorithm. The safe opened with a quiet click. I feverishly checked the contents. Most of the documents were there, but some were clearly missing. A copy of my passport, the title deed to my house, and several bank statements were gone. And my old checkbook, which had my signature on several pages. Damn it. How could I have been so careless? Someone had obviously been here, opened the safe and stolen the documents. But who knew the combination? I never wrote it down or told anyone. I sank into a chair, feeling exhaustion weigh heavily on me. The events of this evening seemed like a nightmare, but it was reality, cruel and merciless. Suddenly I remembered. 3 weeks ago, Bradley and Rhonda came over for Sunday dinner. After the meal, Bradley helped me in the garden, and Rhonda volunteered to wash the dishes. At one point, I went into the kitchen for a glass of water and didn't find her there. When I asked where she was, Bradley waved his hand vaguely. Probably in the bathroom. A few minutes later, she reappeared, saying she needed to powder her nose. I didn't think much of it at the time. Could she have searched my study during that time? Quite possibly. But how did she know the combination to the safe? That seemed unlikely. I began to methodically search the study for signs of a break-in. Everything looked almost perfect. Almost. The books on the shelves were in the right order. The papers on the desk were neatly stacked. But my gaze caught on one detail. The folder with tax returns for the last 5 years was lying with the spine to the right, although I always put it with the spine to the left. A trifle that only a pathological pedant like me would notice. I opened the folder. The documents were there, but the order of the pages had been disturbed. Someone had gone through them and then carelessly put them back. Perhaps they had made copies. I was overcome with cold fury. Someone had not only stolen from me, they had invaded my personal space, rummaged through my things, violated the boundaries of my home. And that someone was almost certainly Rhonda. But why? What could you do with $2,700,000? Buy a house? Invest? Leave the country? All of these options seemed pointless, considering that the fraud would be discovered sooner or later. I walked over to the window and pulled back the curtains. Framingham was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the drama unfolding in my home. Somewhere out there, Rhonda and Bradley were probably celebrating the success of their scam, unaware that I already knew everything. The phone rang, making me jump. I glanced at the screen. Bradley's number. Talking to him right now was beyond my strength. I dismissed the call. A minute later, the phone rang again. Bradley again. I turned off the sound and put the phone on the table. I needed to collect my thoughts and come up with a plan of action. If I understood the situation correctly, I had until morning to finally block the loan. Then I needed to find out who was behind this fraud, although I had almost no doubt about the answer. And finally, I had to decide what to do with these people who were once my family. I went back to the safe and examined it carefully. There were no signs of forced entry, which meant that someone knew the combination. Or had they watched me enter it? That was unlikely, as I had always been careful. Maybe they used some kind of special equipment. I had heard of devices that could read the combination from the heat signature of your fingers. Lost in thought, I mechanically ran my hand along the bottom edge of the desk and froze. My fingers found something small, like a button. I leaned over and looked. A tiny object the size of a coin was glued under the desk. My heart skipped a beat. A microphone? A camera? I carefully peeled off the device and held it up to the light. It was a miniature camera with a lens the size of a pinhead. Modern spy technology, available to anyone for a couple $100s in an online store. So that's how they did it. They installed a hidden camera to spy on the combination of the safe. And then, when I wasn't home, they calmly walked in and took everything they needed. I clenched the camera in my fist so hard that the plastic cracked. The blood pounded in my temples. Betrayal always hurts more when it comes from those closest to you. My daughter-in-law, my son's wife, planned to steal millions from me, and my son, was he an accomplice or just as blind as ever? I looked down at the pieces of the camera in my palm, a small device that could have ruined my life if it weren't for my years of paranoia and habit of checking everything several times over. The phone on the table vibrated. A message had arrived. I picked it up and read, "Dad, we need to talk. Urgently. It's very important." From Bradley. I smiled. Yes, we really did need to talk. But not now. First, I wanted to gather all the evidence, build an irrefutable case. I wanted to see their faces when I presented them with everything I knew. I put the camera fragments on the table and looked around the office again. If there was one camera here, there could be others. I needed to check the whole house. But first, I had to finish with the bank. I dialed Donovan's number. "Michael, it's me again," I said when he answered. "I need another favor. I want to know where the money was supposed to be transferred. To which account?" "Wilmer, it's almost midnight." "I know what time it is," I interrupted. "This is important." Donovan sighed. "Okay, I'll look in the records. Give me a minute." I waited, listening to his footsteps and the rustling of papers. Finally, he returned to the phone. The money was supposed to be transferred to an account belonging to a certain Deidre Farrow at Citizens Union Bank. Does that name mean anything to you? Farrow, like Rhonda Farrow. Too obvious a coincidence. "Yes," I said slowly. "It does. Thank you, Michael." I hung up and leaned back in my chair. Deidre Farrow. Must be Rhonda's mother. I knew almost nothing about her except that she lived somewhere in New Hampshire, and according to Rhonda, had health problems. So Rhonda was trying to steal money from me for her mother. The picture was starting to become clearer, but many details were still unclear. What exactly did she need the money for? And did Bradley know about his wife's plans? I got up and walked over to the bookcase. Behind one of the books was hidden the key to the hiding place in the floor. Another of my paranoid ideas, which now seemed entirely justified. I pulled back the carpet, opened a small hatch in the parquet floor, and took out a metal box. Inside was a gun I had bought after a series of robberies in our neighborhood 15 years ago. I had never fired it, except once at a shooting range. I had no intention of killing anyone, of course. But now I felt unsafe in my own home. Who knows what else Rhonda was capable of if she was willing to commit fraud on such a scale. I put the gun back in its hiding place and closed it. Then I slowly knelt down and looked under the desk. In the far corner, almost invisible in the shadows, I noticed another object similar to the first camera. I reached out and carefully peeled it off. Exactly the same device. Two cameras. They really had thought of everything. The first was probably aimed at the safe, the second at the desk where I often worked with documents. I stood up, feeling my knees creak. Age was finally catching up with me, but my mind was clearer than ever. I knew what I had to do next. I needed all the evidence, all the threads of this conspiracy. And then I would teach Rhonda a lesson she would never forget. I walked over to the window and drew the curtains. Then I turned off the overhead light, leaving only the desk lamp on. In its warm yellowish glow, my office looked almost cozy, if not for the circumstances. I carefully placed both cameras on the table, next to the phone that continued to vibrate with messages from Bradley. Little traitors. How long had they been here? What else had they seen and heard? Slowly scanning my office, I noticed something else unusual. The photo of Evelyn on the shelf was at a slightly different angle than I always placed it. Someone had picked it up and not put it back exactly where it belonged. I hardly slept that night. My head was buzzing with thoughts and plans. By 6 in the morning, I was already up and ready for action. First thing I did was drink a strong cup of coffee without sugar. An old habit left over from my days as an auditor when I had to sit up all night working on reports. Sitting down at the desk in my office, I laid out the cameras I had found yesterday and began methodically searching the room for other tracking devices. I checked all the shelves, cabinets, and paintings. I found nothing else. 2 devices, under the table and near the safe. Apparently that was all Rhonda had managed to install. Now I needed evidence of her involvement, preferably irrefutable. I wasn't a detective, but over the years as an auditor, I had learned to collect evidence of financial crimes, and the principle was the same. Build a chain of events, find inconsistencies, establish a motive. First, I examined the safe more carefully. Yesterday, in my haste and anger, I had missed some details. Now in the morning light, fingerprints were clearly visible on the polished surface of the dial. Not just smudges, but quite clear in several places. I carefully took an old box with a fingerprint collection kit out of the desk drawer. Another hobby inspired by detective novels, which Evelyn always teased me about. After carefully applying a thin layer of special powder to the surface of the dial, I saw several clear prints. Then, just as carefully, I transferred them to adhesive tape and attached them to a white sheet of paper. Comparing them to Rhonda's fingerprints would be difficult, but it was a start. Next, I checked which documents were missing from the safe. I made a list: a copy of my passport, the title deed to my house, several bank statements from the last 3 months, my checkbook with pages bearing my signature, a copy of my tax return for the previous year, everything that might be needed to take out a large loan. This was already substantial evidence, but it wasn't enough. I needed to link these missing items directly to Rhonda. I remembered the cameras. If they were really recording what was happening in the room, they had to either store the information on their built-in memory or transmit it over the network. I carefully examined both devices. The manufacturer and model were marked on the body of one of them. After Googling on my phone, I found out that this model transmits video via Wi-Fi to a special app. That meant Rhonda must have this app on her phone. By 8 o'clock, I was ready to go to the bank to finally cancel the loan. But before that, I decided to call my old friend Lester Pritchard, who had opened a private detective agency after retiring from the FBI. We hadn't talked in a couple of years, but such friendships don't rust. Les, it's Wilmer Beckwith. Sorry for the early call. Wilmer. His voice sounded surprised but not sleepy. What a surprise. Are you still smoking the sky? Or have you joined the retirees club too? I've been retired for 5 years. Listen, I need your professional help. A situation has arisen. I briefly outlined the essence of the matter, without getting emotional or going into unnecessary details. Damn, Lester whistled when I finished. Your own sister-in-law? That's serious. Exactly. I need to gather all the evidence so she has no way out. What exactly do you want from me? Several things. First, check what else is known about this Deidre Farrow, Rhonda's mother. Second, see if Rhonda has any criminal record or arrests. And third, I need to know if my son is involved in this. Lester paused. For an official investigation, this all sounds like a conflict of interest, Wilmer. But unofficially, as a friend, I'll see what I can do. Give me a couple of hours. Thanks, Les. I knew I could count on you. After talking to Lester, I went to the bank. Michael Donovan was already waiting for me, looking sleep-deprived but composed. Good morning, Wilmer. We've prepared all the documents for the loan cancellation. All we need is your signature. He led me into his office, where a stack of papers lay on the desk. I read each document carefully before signing. Paranoid? Maybe. But after yesterday, I wasn't going to sign anything without thoroughly reviewing it first. Here's a statement about the fraudulent use of your data. Donovan handed me another document. Here you need to indicate whether you are filing a report with the police. I thought about it. Reporting it to the police would mean a formal investigation, interrogations, and possibly even Rhonda's arrest. It would be a scandal that would also affect Bradley. Was I ready for that? On the other hand, fraud on this scale should not go unpunished. I'll note that the decision to file a report will be made later, I said, making a note on the document. First, I want to gather more information. Donovan nodded. I understand. In that case, the bank will conduct an internal investigation, but without involving law enforcement. However, I must warn you that if the money had been transferred and spent, it would have seriously complicated the situation. But that didn't happen, right? No, he confirmed. The transaction has been completely blocked. We have also frozen the account of this Deidre Farrow in case she is an accomplice. Excellent. I signed the last document. And one more request, Michael. I need a copy of the loan agreement with my forged signature. For my own investigation. Donovan hesitated. Technically, it's an internal bank document. Michael, I looked him straight in the eye. We've known each other for 20 years. During that time, I've brought the bank millions of dollars in profits. I've never asked for anything, but now I'm asking. He sighed and nodded. All right, Wilmer, I'll make a copy for you. Just please be careful with it. Half an hour later, I left the bank with a folder of documents, including a copy of the loan agreement with my forged signature. Now I had the key piece of evidence of fraud. The next step was to find out the whole truth about Rhonda's mother. I returned home and called Lester. Anything? Oh, yes, he said, his voice filled with the professional satisfaction of someone who had unearthed something interesting. Deidre Farrow, 62 years old, resides in Nashua, New Hampshire. Bankrupt 3 times in the last 15 years. The last time was a year ago. She's currently facing eviction from her home. She hasn't paid her mortgage in 8 months. The eviction deadline is in 3 days. I whistled, so that's it. Rhonda was trying to save her mother's house. What about Rhonda herself? Clean as a whistle, at least officially. No convictions, no arrests. But there is something interesting. 10 years ago, she worked at another hotel, and there was an internal investigation into the disappearance of money from several guests' safes. She wasn't officially charged, but she quit right after that incident. Maybe it's a coincidence, or maybe... What about Bradley? Lester paused. Nothing suspicious. Stable job, average salary, no debts except a car loan. From what I can see, he doesn't look like an accomplice. More like a victim of manipulation. That matched my intuition. Bradley had always been weak-willed, easily influenced by others. Rhonda probably manipulated him however she wanted. Thanks, Les. That's very useful information. There's something else, he added. I checked Deidre's bank accounts. In addition to her mortgage, she has about $400,000 in debt. Credit cards, consumer loans, medical bills, plus the mortgage, about $300,000. That's a total debt of $700,000. And the loan was for $2.7 million, right? Yes. So I'm wondering, what was the remaining $2 million planned for? Excellent question. What was Rhonda going to spend the rest of the money on? Buy her own house? Leave the country? Or just live a life of luxury? After thanking Lester again, I decided to take the next step. Evict Rhonda and Bradley from the house they were renting. Technically, the house belonged to Beckwith Investments, a small company I had registered many years ago to manage my real estate. Neither Bradley nor Rhonda knew that I was behind this company. I called my lawyer, Arthur Wright. Arthur, I need to initiate eviction proceedings against the tenants of one of our houses as soon as possible. On what grounds? He asked briskly. Breach of lease, and I want it done as quickly as possible. Wilmer, you know that eviction proceedings usually take several weeks, sometimes even months. The contract has a clause about immediate eviction in case of a tenant violating the law. And I have evidence that the tenant committed major fraud. Arthur paused. That changes things. Send me all the documents and I'll take care of it immediately. But I must warn you, even in this case, the legal formalities will take at least 2 or 3 days. Do everything you can, Arthur. I want them to receive the eviction notice today. After talking to the lawyer, I decided to gather all the available evidence together. I laid out on the table the fingerprints from the safe, the list of missing documents, the cameras I had found, and a copy of the loan agreement with the forged signature. Together, they painted an irrefutable picture of fraud. But one element was still missing, a direct link between Rhonda and this evidence. I needed something that would point directly to her. Then I remembered my phone. Bradley had called me several times last night, but I hadn't answered. What if it wasn't just a coincidence? What if he was trying to find out if I knew about the loan? I opened my call history. Bradley had called 4 times between 10:30 and midnight, too persistent for a normal evening call. Then I checked my messages. 3 messages. Dad, we need to talk. Urgent. Dad, please call me back. This is really important. Dad, I know you're awake. Please answer. Such persistence could only mean one thing. They had somehow found out that I had discovered the fraud. But how? And then it dawned on me. The bank. When I demanded that the loan be blocked, the bank had to notify the recipient somehow. Deidre probably received the notification and immediately contacted her daughter. That meant Rhonda knew I had uncovered her plan, and now she was desperately trying to contact me through Bradley to… What? Explain? Apologize? Try to convince me not to go to the police? Well, they would get their chance to talk. But on my terms and when I'm ready. In the meantime, the phone rang. Arthur's number. Wilmer, I contacted Judge Henderson. Given the seriousness of the charges and the immediate eviction clause in the contract, he agreed to sign an emergency eviction order. A copy has already been sent to the sheriff for delivery. They should receive the notice within a day. Great, Arthur. Thanks for your quick response. I must warn you, they have the right to challenge this decision in court. And if they have a good lawyer? They don't have the money for a good lawyer, I interrupted him. That's why they tried to steal mine. After talking to Arthur, I felt a surge of energy. My plan for revenge was beginning to take shape. I was taking away their roof over their heads, the first step toward just retribution. But there was still one important question left. Bradley, my son. What should I do with him? Was he an accomplice or just a puppet in his wife's hands? And how would his reaction to the eviction affect our relationship? I thought about it for a long time, sitting in my chair and looking at Evelyn's photo. What would she say? She would probably advise me to talk to my son, to give him a chance to explain himself. But after so many years of disappointment, I wasn't sure I was ready for another one. At 2:30 in the afternoon, Lester called. Wilmer, I have news. I checked Rhonda's phone calls for the last month. She called her mother almost every day and several times a day for the last week. And here's what's interesting. 3 weeks ago, she called several banks, including First National. It looks like she was trying to find out about a loan for her mother, but was turned down everywhere because of Deidre's poor credit history. Did they discuss this with Bradley? Apparently not. I don't see any joint calls to banks or financial institutions. What's more, on the days she called the banks, Bradley was at work. I checked his schedule. So Bradley most likely didn't know about his wife's plan, at least initially. But what is he doing now that everything has been revealed? Around 4 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I cautiously approached and looked through the peephole. An unfamiliar man in uniform was standing on the doorstep. Who's there? I asked. Deputy Sheriff Michael Dawson. I need to speak with Mr. Wilmer Beckwith. I opened the door but left the chain on. That's me. How can I help you? He showed me his badge. Sir, I'm here to inform you that an eviction notice has been served to the tenants of the house at 23 Oak Street. According to the court order, they must vacate the premises within 24 hours. Was the notice delivered to them personally? Yes, sir. A woman named Rhonda Beckwith. She was, extremely upset. I thanked the deputy sheriff and closed the door. So Rhonda had received the notice. Now she knew that I knew, and that I wasn't going to let her get away with it. There was one last step left in my plan. I sat down at my computer and wrote an email to the Sheraton, where Rhonda worked, an anonymous report that one of the employees was involved in a major fraud. No specific names, but with a reference to the position of corporate events coordinator. That should be enough to arouse suspicion. When I finished the letter, I leaned back in my chair, feeling a strange satisfaction. I had protected my money, punished the traitor, and perhaps taught her a lesson she would not soon forget. The phone rang again. This time it was not Bradley, but Rhonda. I watched her name flash on the screen and wondered whether I should answer. Was I ready to hear her excuses or pleas? I decided not to. It wasn't time yet. Let her feel the consequences of her actions first. A few minutes after the unanswered call, a message arrived. Please, Wilmer, we need to talk. I can explain everything. I smiled. Explain? What was there to explain? $2,700,000 worth of fraud speaks for itself. I turned off my phone and walked over to the window. The day was drawing to a close, and golden light flooded the street. Somewhere out there, in her soon-to-be former home, Rhonda was frantically trying to figure out what to do next. And I could calmly enjoy my small victory. Justice had prevailed, at least my version of justice. The next morning began with a persistent knock on the door. I was already awake. At my age, you go to bed early and get up early, whether you want to or not. I was sitting at the kitchen table in my bathrobe, drinking coffee and reading the morning paper. When I heard the knock, I didn't rush to open the door. I already guessed who it was. The knock repeated, this time louder, almost turning into a bang. Dad, I know you're home. Open up now. Bradley's voice sounded like I hadn't heard it in years. It was a mixture of anger, despair, and something else. Fear, perhaps. I slowly finished my coffee, put the cup in the sink, tightened my robe belt, and went to open the door. But before removing the chain, I looked through the peephole. Bradley and Rhonda were standing on the porch. My son looked like he hadn't slept all night. His hair was tousled, his shirt was wrinkled, his eyes were red. Rhonda, on the other hand, was impeccably dressed and coiffed, as always. Only the paleness of her face and her tightly pressed lips betrayed her state. I removed the chain and opened the door, but remained standing in the doorway, blocking the entrance. Good morning, I said calmly, as if their appearance was the most normal thing in the world. What brings you to me so early? Bradley stared at me in bewilderment. Are you serious? His voice broke. You're evicting us from our home, and you're asking why we came? Oh, that, I shrugged. Well, come in. Let's not discuss family matters on the doorstep. I stepped aside to let them in. Rhonda walked past me without looking me in the eye, while Bradley moved as if he were being led to his execution, slowly with visible effort. In the living room, I pointed them to the sofa and sat down in my favorite chair across from them. Between us was a coffee table, a small but symbolic barrier. So, I began, folding my hands in my lap, I assume you received the eviction notice. Yes, damn it, we did, Bradley exploded. And I want to know what game you're playing. Why did Beckwith Investments suddenly decide to evict us? And why the hell didn't you respond when I called you yesterday? I looked at Rhonda. She sat motionless, her hands clasped together, staring past me. I wondered if she had told her husband the truth, or was she still lying, even now? Bradley, I said slowly, choosing my words carefully. Before I answer your questions, I'd like to know, what did Rhonda tell you about the reasons for the eviction? My son frowned. She said it was some kind of mistake, that there might have been some confusion about the rent payment, but she checked everything. We paid on time. We have the receipts. I nodded. I see. Did she mention the $2.7 million loan taken out in my name? Bradley blinked in confusion. What? What loan? He turned to Rhonda. What is he talking about? Rhonda finally looked up at me. Her gaze was defiant, mixed with fear. I was going to tell you, she said quietly to her husband, without taking her eyes off me. But I didn't have time. It all happened too fast. Tell you what. Bradley's voice sounded panicked. Someone took out a loan in Dad's name? Is this some kind of fraud? Oh, it's definitely fraud, I confirmed. The only question is, Who is the fraudster? I got up and went to the secretary, where I had prepared a folder with evidence. Returning, I placed it on the table and opened it. Here's a copy of the loan agreement. Look at the signature. I handed the document to Bradley. It looks a lot like mine, right? But there are a few differences that I pointed out to the bank. It's a forgery. Bradley stared at the paper, then looked at his wife. Rhonda, what's going on here? She pressed her lips together even tighter but didn't answer. And here, I continued, taking out the next document, is the money transfer order. The recipient is a certain Deidre Farrow. That's your mother, Rhonda, isn't it? Bradley turned pale. What? He turned back to his wife. Your mother? Rhonda, answer me. She finally spoke, her voice sounding unexpectedly firm. Yes, she's my mother. She's about to lose her house. She's being evicted in 3 days if she doesn't pay off her mortgage. And that's why you decided to steal $2,700,000 from my father? Bradley almost shouted. I wasn't going to steal it, Rhonda snapped. I would have paid the money back. In time. How? I asked calmly. Your salary is what, $60,000 a year? With that income, it would take you 45 years to pay off the entire loan, even without interest. And that's if you gave away all your earnings without spending a cent. Rhonda's eyes flashed. I had a plan. I was going to invest some of the money so it would generate income. What kind of investments? I raised an eyebrow skeptically. You have no experience in financial matters. Your previous attempts to invest ended in a loss of $5,000 on some dubious stocks. Bradley looked suspiciously at me, then at Rhonda. Wait, he raised his hand, as if trying to stop the flow of information. Are you saying that Rhonda forged your signature and took out a loan in your name? But how? She didn't have access to your documents. I took a package with 2 miniature cameras out of the folder. Here's how. I found these devices in my office. One was pointed at the safe, the other at the desk. They transmit video via Wi-Fi to a special app. I believe if we check Rhonda's phone, we'll find that app. Bradley looked as if he had been punched in the gut. Cameras? In your house? He turned to Rhonda. You were spying on my father? Rhonda jumped up from the couch, her face contorted with anger. Yes, I installed those damn cameras. I forged his signature. I took out a loan. And you know why? Because my mother is desperate. She's about to be out on the street. And your father sits here in his huge house with millions in the bank and won't lift a finger to help. Help who? I stood up too. Your mother, whom I've never even met. A woman who went bankrupt 3 times because of her own financial irresponsibility? Why should I give her the money I've earned all my life? Because you can, Rhonda shouted. That money means nothing to you. You wouldn't even notice it was gone if it weren't for your damn paranoia. It's not about the amount. I felt anger boiling up inside me, but I tried to speak calmly. It's a matter of principle. You broke into my house, installed spy equipment, stole my documents, forged my signature. You committed a crime, Rhonda, a criminal offense. Bradley sat with his face in his hands. I can't believe this, he muttered. I just can't believe it, son. I put my hand on his shoulder. I have all the evidence. A copy of the loan agreement with a forged signature. The cameras from my office. Fingerprints on the safe. The bank has already canceled the loan and is preparing a statement for the police. Rhonda turned sharply to me. You're bluffing. If the bank were preparing a statement for the police, I would have been arrested already. I asked them to wait, I replied. I wanted to talk to you first, give you a chance to explain. Although, to be honest, your explanations don't convince me. Bradley raised his head. Dad, please, his voice trembled. Let's resolve this some other way. Without the police, without the courts. Rhonda made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But mistake? I didn't let him finish. Bradley, this isn't a mistake. A mistake is when you accidentally take someone else's property or fill out a document incorrectly. This is a carefully planned crime. Rhonda spent weeks preparing for this. She bought spy equipment, installed it in my house, waited for the right moment, forged documents, and you call that a mistake? Rhonda sat down on the sofa again, but now her posture had changed. She no longer looked bold and confident. Her shoulders slumped, her hands lay limply on her knees. I had no choice, she said quietly. My mother called me every day, crying, saying she would kill herself if she lost her house. I tried to take out a loan in my name. They refused. In Bradley's name, they refused too. I was desperate. And you decided that my money was the answer to all your problems? I shook my head. You know what really surprises me? The amount of the loan. $2,700,000. Your mother's mortgage debt is about $300,000. Plus other debts. Another $400,000. Even if you rounded up to $1 million, where was the rest of the money going, Rhonda? What were you going to do with the extra $1,700,000? She remained silent, not looking up. I'll tell you, I continued. You were planning to run away. Maybe not right away. First, you would help your mother, yes. And then, in a month or two, you would have disappeared with the rest of the money. Maybe you would have even taken Bradley with you. Or more likely, you would have left him too. That's not true, Rhonda exclaimed. I would never leave Bradley. But stealing from his father is okay? I smirked. You have an interesting set of values. Bradley stood up and began pacing the room. I don't understand, he muttered. Why didn't you tell me? We could have figured something out together. Find a legal way to help your mother. Rhonda smiled bitterly. What way, Bradley? We barely have enough money to pay for rent and food. Your salary's a joke, and your father is sitting on millions and doesn't even think about helping us. Why should I help you? I asked, feeling an old resentment flaring up inside me. Bradley is 46 years old and you're a grown woman too. Why should I support you? Because we're family, Rhonda shouted. Isn't that what family is for? To help each other? Family? I felt my voice grow colder. You call us a family? After what you did? Families don't steal from each other, Rhonda. Families don't install hidden cameras in each other's homes. Families don't forge signatures on loan agreements. Dad, please, Bradley approached me. Let's find a solution. I'll make Rhonda apologize. She'll return all the documents she took. We'll pay you compensation every month, little by little. I looked at my son with pity, always weak, always looking for a compromise, even when there isn't one. Compensation for what, Bradley? For trying to steal $2,700,000? How much are you offering? $500 a month? I shook my head. At that rate, it will take you 450 years to pay it off. Then what do you want? Bradley's voice sounded desperate. For Rhonda to go to prison? For us to lose our home? I sat back down in my chair and looked at them both intently. What do I want? I want justice. And you know what else? I want you both to finally grow up. Bradley, you're 46 years old and you're still living like a teenager. No plan for the future, no ambition, no responsibility. Your wife decided it was easier to steal money from me than to earn it honestly. And you didn't even notice what she was up to. I didn't know, he exclaimed. I swear, I had no idea what she was planning. That's exactly the problem, I said. You should have known. You should have seen what was going on in your own family. But you prefer to close your eyes to the uncomfortable truth. You always have. Rhonda suddenly laughed, a bitter, choppy laugh. Oh, that's rich, she said. You're accusing Bradley of not seeing the truth? And what about you? For years, you didn't notice how he was suffering from your neglect, how desperately he seeks your approval, how he tries to live up to your impossible standards. I looked at her in surprise. What are you talking about? About what a terrible father you are, Rhonda blurted out. You've always been cold to Bradley, always criticizing him. You always compared him to yourself and found him lacking. And now you're surprised that he grew up without confidence? Without ambition? Of course he doesn't have any. You destroyed it with your constant disapproval. I looked at my son. Is that true? Is that what you think? Bradley lowered his eyes. Not really. I mean, yes, you were strict sometimes, but I understand that you wanted the best for me. Don't make excuses for him. Rhonda jumped up. Tell the truth. Tell her how you cried after every conversation with him in the early years of our marriage. Tell me how you were afraid to invite him to dinner because you knew he would criticize everything, from your job to the color of our curtains. Enough, Bradley said quietly. This is irrelevant. No, it's not, Rhonda insisted. All our problems started with him, with his coldness, his stinginess, his damn inability to be a normal father. I felt something break inside me. Was I really that kind of father? Did Bradley really suffer that much? I always thought I was doing everything right, teaching him responsibility, independence, financial literacy. Maybe I was trying too hard. But then I remembered what we were talking about: fraud, theft, betrayal. Even if everything you say is true, Rhonda, I said slowly, it doesn't justify what you did. No problems in our relationship give you the right to steal my money. I wasn't going to steal it, she shouted again. I would have paid it back to the last cent. When? I looked her straight in the eye. In 20 years? 30? I won't be alive by then, Rhonda. And you know it. You were counting on my death. Bradley flinched. Dad, don't say that. What should I say? I turned to him. Pleasant euphemisms? The truth is, your wife is a fraud. She tried to steal my money and almost succeeded. And now that she's been caught, she's trying to shift the blame onto me. A classic manipulator's tactic. Rhonda stood up abruptly. You know what? To hell with all this. To hell with you, your money, and your accusations. You're right, I tried to take out a loan in your name. I admit it. But I did it for my mother, who is desperate. And you? You're evicting us from our home out of revenge. Which one of us is worse, huh? I'm evicting you because you violated the terms of the lease, I replied calmly. The contract clearly states that any illegal actions by the tenant are grounds for immediate eviction. Fraud is an illegal action. Wait, Bradley frowned. You said you violated the terms. But it was Rhonda who took out the loan, not me. Why are you evicting both of us? Because you're a family, aren't you? I shrugged. Husband and wife are two of a kind, as they say. That's not fair, Bradley exclaimed. I didn't know anything about her plans. Maybe, I agreed, but you live with her. You are responsible for her actions, especially when they are directed against your own family. Rhonda laughed. There he is, your real father, Bradley. Cold, calculating, ruthless, even to his own son. Bradley looked at me with such despair that for a moment I felt sorry for him, but then I remembered the cameras in my office, the forged signature, the $2,700,000 that had almost disappeared from my account, and my heart hardened again. You have 24 hours to vacate the house, I said. That's the court's decision. Where are we supposed to go? Bradley asked. That's not my problem, I said, standing up to indicate that the conversation was over. You're adults. Figure it out yourselves. What about the police? Rhonda looked at me defiantly. Are you really going to report me? I hesitated. This was the moment of truth. Was I prepared to send my son's wife to prison? To destroy her life completely? That's up to you, I finally said. If you admit your guilt, apologize, and promise never to come near me or my money again, I'll think about it. So you want me to never see Bradley again? Her voice trembled with rage. Because if I can't see you, I can't see him either. Is that what you want? To destroy our family? No, Rhonda, you destroyed our family when you decided to steal from me. Bradley stepped between us. Enough, both of you. His voice sounded unexpectedly firm. I can't listen to this. Let's go, Dad. We'll vacate the house as you demand, but I ask you to think about your decision, about what it means for all of us. I looked at my son for a long time. I've already thought it through, Bradley, and my decision is final. He nodded as if he had expected that answer. Then there's nothing more for us to do here. Let's go, Rhonda. She didn't move. No, she said, looking at me. Not until he promises not to go to the police. I'm not promising anything, I replied. You committed a crime, Rhonda, and you have to be prepared to face the consequences. Dad, please. Bradley looked at me imploringly. If Rhonda gets arrested, it will ruin my life too. I sighed. There it was. Bradley's eternal weakness. His inability to see when he was being manipulated. All right, I finally said. I won't go to the police on one condition. You both leave Framingham. Forever. Rhonda stared at me. What? You're kicking us out of town? Exactly. I don't want to risk running into you on the street or at the supermarket every day. I don't want my neighbors whispering about how my daughter-in-law tried to rob me. Leave. Start a new life somewhere else. Then I won't call the police. Bradley and Rhonda exchanged glances. Their eyes showed a mixture of shock, anger, and surprisingly, relief. Is that really what you want? Bradley asked quietly. To never see your own son again? I felt a twinge of pain, but quickly suppressed it. I want justice, Bradley, and safety. Your wife has shown what she is capable of. I can no longer trust her. And to be honest, you can't trust her either. You couldn't see what was happening right under your nose. But that's cruel, his voice trembled. Cruel? I shook my head. Cruel is stealing $2,700,000 from a 77-year-old man. Cruel is installing hidden cameras in his house. Cruel is forging his signature. I'm just defending myself. 3 days later, I was sitting in my office going through the morning mail. Among the usual bills and advertising brochures, I found an envelope with Bradley's familiar handwriting on it. I stared at it for a long time before deciding to open it. Inside was a piece of paper folded in half. The note was short. Dad, Rhonda, and I are leaving today. She found a job in Portland, Maine. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I'll find something. I understand your anger and disappointment. Rhonda made a terrible mistake, and we're both paying for it. But she's my wife, and I can't abandon her, especially now. I'm leaving you my new phone number. Call me sometime if you want. Bradley, I reread the note several times, then folded it neatly and put it in my desk drawer. No remorse, no real admission of guilt, just a desire to forget everything as quickly as possible and move on. Typical Bradley, avoiding confrontation, smoothing things over, pretending that nothing serious had happened. Walking over to the window, I saw a moving truck slowly driving down the street. Probably their stuff. So they really are leaving. Part of me wanted to go out on the porch and wave goodbye, but another larger part knew it would be insincere. Our relationship ended the moment Rhonda installed cameras in my house. I poured myself a whiskey, unusual for me at such an early hour, but today was a special day, the day I finally lost my son. It's not that we were ever really close, but now even the appearance of a family relationship was gone. The phone rang, interrupting my dark thoughts. It was Lester. Wilmer, I checked on Deidre Farrow, as you requested. She was evicted from her home yesterday. According to my sources, she is now living with her sister in Concord. Thanks for the information, Les. There's something else, he continued. I took a closer look at Rhonda's credit history. Over the past 5 years, she has applied for loans at 17 different banks and has been rejected by all of them due to her poor credit rating. Her last attempt was a week before the incident with you. I snorted. So I was her last hope. When all legal avenues had been exhausted, she resorted to crime. And one more thing. Lester's voice became more serious. My contact in the police says that Deidre has a trail of suspicious incidents behind her. Nothing that would lead to charges, but there's a pattern. She's been involved in questionable financial schemes several times. In 2000, she tried to collect insurance on a supposedly stolen car, which was then miraculously found. In 2007, she filed a lawsuit against her employer for an alleged workplace injury. All cases were closed due to lack of evidence, but the picture that emerges is unflattering. This information did not surprise me, but it added another piece to the overall mosaic. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Mother and daughter both willing to do anything for money. Thanks, Les. That explains a lot. Are you still thinking about reporting it to the police? I thought about it. My initial anger had subsided, replaced by cold determination. Do I need Rhonda to be behind bars? Or is it enough that she and Bradley are out of my life? No, I finally replied. As long as they stay away from me, I won't. After talking to Lester, I decided to go for a walk. It was a clear day with a light breeze, perfect fall weather. I walked through the familiar streets of Framingham, thinking about how quickly life can change. Just a week ago, I had a son, a daughter-in-law, the semblance of a family. Now I was alone again. But hadn't it always been that way? Ever since Evelyn died, I had been truly alone. Bradley and Rhonda visited me out of politeness, and lately out of self-interest. There had never been any real closeness between us. I remembered Rhonda's words about me being a cold father, about me stifling Bradley with my demands and expectations. Was there some truth in that? Perhaps. I always wanted my son to be a strong, independent person, and perhaps I sometimes went too far in my parenting methods. But did that justify what they did? Walking past the park, I noticed an elderly couple sitting on a bench. They were holding hands and discussing something quietly, laughing from time to time. I felt a pang of envy. Evelyn and I could be in their place now if it weren't for the damn cancer. We could have grown old together, supported each other, and enjoyed grandchildren whom we never had. Grandchildren. Another unfulfilled dream. Bradley and Rhonda had been married for 8 years, but they never had children. Rhonda always said she wanted to build a career first, buy a house, and secure a stable future. And now, after everything that had happened, the likelihood of me ever having grandchildren was close to zero. When I got home, I saw a message on the answering machine from Michael Donovan at the bank. He asked me to call him back about an important matter. I dialed his number, wondering what could have happened. Wilmer, Michael's voice sounded tense. We have a situation. Deidre Farrow has filed a complaint with the Banking Oversight Commission. She claims that the loan was taken out legally with your consent and that you changed your mind after the fact, causing her to lose her home. I felt the anger boiling up inside me again. That's absurd. You have my statement about the fraud. You have proof of the forged signature. I know, Donovan said soothingly. The bank is completely on your side. But the procedure requires an investigation, and we need you to officially confirm your version of events, preferably by filing a report with the police. So that's it. If I don't go to the police, this story could drag on, creating problems not only for me, but also for the bank. And given my long relationship with First National, I didn't want to let them down. Okay, Michael, I'll file a report. Send me all the necessary documents. After the conversation, I sat in my chair for a long time, thinking about the consequences. Going to the police meant that a criminal case would be brought against Rhonda. She could be arrested, tried, and possibly even sent to prison. Bradley would never forgive me for that. But did I have a choice? Deidre Farrow's complaint left me no alternative. I took Bradley's note out of the drawer and reread it. She's my wife, and I can't abandon her. So, the choice was made. He chose Rhonda, despite everything she had done. He chose the woman who had almost stolen millions of dollars from his father. What does that say about his character? About his moral principles? The next morning, I went to the Framingham police station. The officer who took my statement listened carefully to my story, wrote down all the details, and took copies of the documents. This is a serious charge, Mr. Beckwith, he said, looking over the papers. Fraud on a particularly large scale. If your sister-in-law is found guilty, she faces up to 10 years in prison. 10 years. I imagined Rhonda in a prison uniform, behind bars, and felt a strange mixture of emotions. On the one hand, she deserved to be punished. On the other hand, it meant that Bradley would be alone all those years, possibly waiting for her release, wasting his life away. What happens next? I asked. We'll conduct an investigation and gather evidence. If there is enough, the case will be referred to the prosecutor, who will decide whether to press charges. Given the amount and the documentary evidence, I would say the chances of a case being brought are high. After leaving the station, I called my lawyer and told him about the situation. Arthur Wright listened to me and gave me some advice on what to do next. In cases like this, he said, it also makes sense to file a civil suit for moral damages. Even if the criminal case drags on or doesn't go to trial, you can get compensation through civil proceedings. It's not about the money, Arthur. I want justice. I understand. But sometimes the best way to get justice is to hit a person in the wallet, especially if that person tried to steal your money. I promised to think about his suggestion and hung up the phone. The idea of demanding money from Rhonda and Bradley seemed petty to me. They had already lost their home, their jobs, and their reputation. Was it worth finishing them off financially as well? In the evening, I was sitting in my office again, looking through old photos. Here's Bradley at 5 years old, smiling broadly, holding his first fishing rod. Here he is at 10, looking serious in a suit at a school play. Here he is at 16, with a guitar, surrounded by friends from his garage band. Here he is at his college graduation, one of the few achievements of his that I was genuinely proud of. Where did I go wrong? At what point did we become so estranged that he chose to stay with the woman who tried to steal from his father? The phone rang, interrupting the flow of memories. Unknown number. Hello? Mr. Beckwith? The woman's voice sounded nervous. This is Deidre Farrow, Rhonda's mother. I almost dropped the phone in surprise. I had never spoken to this woman before, but she was the reason this whole story had started. What do you want? I asked coldly. Please, listen to me. Her voice sounded desperate. I know you filed a report with the police. I know my daughter made a terrible mistake, but I'm begging you, please withdraw the report. Rhonda has never broken the law before. She only did it because of me, because of my situation, because of your situation, I interrupted her. You mean the situation you got yourself into? 3 bankruptcies, endless debt, losing your house because you couldn't pay the mortgage? That situation? There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line. There's a lot you don't know, she finally said quietly. My last husband left me with huge debts. I fought as hard as I could, but you decided that the best solution was to steal money from your son-in-law's father. I finished for her. You know, Mrs. Farrow, I worked as an auditor for many years. I've seen hundreds of people with financial problems. And do you know what they all had in common? An inability to take responsibility for their own decisions. It was always someone else's fault. Their ex-spouse, the economy, the government, the banks. Never themselves. You don't understand. No, you don't understand. Your daughter could have gone to prison for 10 years. She might still go to prison, and all because of your irresponsibility. Please, her voice was tearful. If not for me, then for Bradley. He's your son after all. Do you really want his wife to end up behind bars? I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. Listen, Mrs. Farrow, I don't want to put anyone in jail, but your daughter and you created this situation. Now you have to face the consequences. And by the way, your complaint to the Banking Oversight Commission was a stupid move. It only complicated your situation. What complaint? Her voice sounded genuinely surprised. I didn't file anything. Now it was my turn to be surprised. Michael Donovan from First National told me that you filed a complaint claiming that the loan was taken out with my consent. No, she said firmly. I didn't do that. I know Rhonda did the wrong thing. I know she forged your signature. I would never make the situation worse with false accusations. I thought about it. If Deidre is telling the truth, then who filed the complaint on her behalf? Rhonda? But why? If they're leaving town. I'll look into it, I said. In the meantime, I can only say, stay away from me and my family, and tell your daughter to do the same. After talking to Deidre, I called Donovan and told him about the strange conversation. He promised to check who had filed the complaint and call me back. An hour later, he contacted me. Wilmer, you won't believe this. The complaint was indeed filed on behalf of Deidre Farrow, but upon verification, it turned out that the signature on the document does not match her signature on bank documents. So it's a forgery? I already guessed where he was going with this. It looks that way, and judging by the handwriting, it was done by the same person who forged your signature on the loan agreement. Rhonda, she didn't stop even after she was exposed. She continued to plot, forge documents, and lie. This finally convinced me that my decision was the right one. The next morning, I received a letter from the prosecutor's office notifying me that my statement had been accepted for consideration and that an investigation had been launched. They asked me to be prepared to testify if necessary. I folded the letter and put it in a folder with other documents related to the case. The wheels of justice had begun to turn, and there was no stopping them now. Even if I wanted to withdraw the statement, it was too late. The case had become official. In the evening, Lester called with new information. Wilmer, I checked Bradley and Rhonda's phone calls over the last few days. They have been actively communicating with several lawyers who specialize in criminal cases. It looks like they're preparing their defense. So they know about the police report. Yes, I'm sure they've already been informed. And there's something else. They've booked plane tickets to Portland for tomorrow morning. It looks like they're really leaving, just as they promised. I thanked Lester for the information and thought about it. Tomorrow they would leave Framingham, perhaps forever. Bradley, my only son, would disappear from my life. Part of me wanted to call him, say goodbye, maybe even try to mend our relationship. But another part knew that was impossible. Too much had been said. Too much had been done. The bridges had been burned. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy heart. Today, Bradley and Rhonda were flying away. I imagined them at the airport with their suitcases, ready to start a new life far away from me. The thought made me feel bitter. I decided to take a walk to clear my head. It was a cool but sunny day. The leaves on the trees had already begun to turn yellow and fall, a sure sign that autumn was in full swing. Passing by the house where Bradley and Rhonda had lived until recently, I noticed a for rent sign. Soon there would be new tenants, and the memories of my son and his wife would gradually fade away. When I got home, I found a small box on the doorstep. Inside were several old photo albums that I had once given to Bradley and an envelope with the keys to their former home. No note, no farewell. I took the box to the living room and opened one of the albums. My former life looked back at me from the faded photographs. Evelyn and I when we were young. Little Bradley, our first home, family holidays, vacations. We looked happy, although I remember that even then, friction was beginning to arise between my son and me. I wanted him to be strong and independent. He wanted creativity and freedom. We never really understood each other. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Arthur Wright. "Wilmer, there's news about your daughter-in-law. The prosecutor has decided to press charges. They'll be trying to arrest her in the next few days." "But she's leaving today," I said. "She and Bradley are flying to Portland." "In that case, they'll put out a warrant for her arrest. It's only a matter of time before they find her." I closed my eyes, imagining the police arriving at their new home in Portland, arresting Rhonda in front of Bradley. What a blow that would be for him. "Arthur, is there any way to stop this? To withdraw the complaint?" "At this stage, no. The case has been referred to the prosecutor's office, and now only they can decide whether to proceed with the prosecution. But given the seriousness of the charges and the evidence available, it is unlikely that they will simply close the case." After talking to Arthur, I sat in my chair for a long time, thinking about what had happened over the past week. My life had been turned upside down. I lost my son, made enemies of Rhonda and her mother, and now I had to live with the thought that Rhonda might end up in prison because of me. But was it my fault? I was defending myself, my money, my life. Rhonda tried to steal millions from me. She installed cameras in my house and forged my signature. She deserved to be punished. And yet, I walked over to the secretary and took out Bradley's note, rereading it once more. "Someday, if you want, give me a call." Would I want to? Could I ever forgive him for choosing Rhonda, for not seeing her true nature, for not standing by me when I needed him most? Time would tell. For now I was alone, as I had been for most of the last 5 years since Evelyn's death. Alone in a big house full of memories and ghosts from the past, with a bitter sense of satisfaction from justice being served, which couldn't fill the void in my heart. But I survived. I protected myself. I didn't let myself be fooled. At my age, that's already a victory, a small, bitter victory, but still.